Amelia murmured the words that made William halt in his tracks. It aches. This is my first time. It was their wedding evening, summer of 1868, inside the modest shack near Willow Creek, Wyoming. The lantern flame danced. The timber frame groaned beneath their combined weight. Will had been a widowed ranch hand for a decade. Amelia, barely 21, had stepped off the stagecoach 3 days prior as his mail-order partner. But something felt deeply amiss. Her frame was rigid as oak. Her fingers quivered. And when Will peered into her gaze, he didn't catch mere bashfulness. He spotted sheer dread. "It'll pass swiftly," Will murmured softly. But then he paused altogether, because that's when he noticed them. The marks, ancient ones, pale yellow and teal snaking along her limbs like a warped chart of suffering. Some dated back months, others stretched further into the past. His weathered cowboy palms, the very ones that could tame a rogue Mustang, abruptly turned tender as down. "Who inflicted this on you?" Will inquired, his tones scarcely audible. Amelia began to weep. Not the soft droplets of an anxious newlywed. These were the deep, wrenching heaves born from seasons of hidden torment. She drew back, clutched the sheet around her, and perched on the bed's rim. "My stepfather," she managed at last. "Harlan Thorpe. After Mama passed 5 years back, She trailed off. She needn't elaborate. Will sensed his veins chilled to frost, then blazed to flame. He'd witnessed battles, loss, and bandits, but this cut deeper. "How long?" Will pressed. 5 years. Each instance I resisted, it intensified. So I ceased resisting. I merely endured. When I spotted your notice seeking a spouse in the Wyoming Gazette, I realized it was my sole escape. I had to flee, even if it meant wedding an unknown soul." Will rose, crossed to the basin, and returned with a cool rag. He settled beside Amelia, not grazing her, just close. "Hear me out, clear as day," Will stated, his timbre even and soothing. "You're secure here. I didn't summon you to cause pain. I brought you because I craved a companion, not a drudge. And companions never wound one another. You follow?" Amelia glanced at him through tear-streaked lashes. She dipped her head gradually. "We're going to ease into this," Will went on. "No hurry. We've got endless days ahead. Tonight you claim the mattress. I'll bunk on the planks. And come dawn, we'll begin anew as allies at first. Then we'll discover the path forward. Agreed?" For the initial moments since touching Wyoming soil, Amelia curved her lips. It was faint, fractured, yet genuine. "Agreed," she breathed. Will snatched a quilt and arranged a pallet on the rough-hewn boards. As he reclined, eyes fixed on the rafters, a single query scorched his thoughts. What sort of beast lays a finger on a vulnerable young woman for half a decade? And crucially, what might Will unleash if that beast ever darkened his spread? The following dawn, Amelia stirred to the aroma of brew and sizzling pork. Back in Indiana, she'd borne the burden of the hearth. Harlan would bellow if the meal wasn't steaming by first light. But here, Will was bent over the range, turning rashers in a heavy skillet as if it were second nature. "Da mornin'," Will offered, back turned. "Trust you fancy your eggs sunny side up. I ain't no chef, but I can nourish us proper." Amelia draped the coverlick over her shoulders and padded to the humble table. In the sun's glow, the shack appeared plain and true, worlds apart from the gloomy, choking dwelling she'd bolted from. "You needn't have bothered," Amelia murmured low. "Nor did you, pledging to a bull-headed elder cowboy without a glimpse," Will countered with a wry grin. "Now dig in. Chores await." In the ensuing fortnight, Will guided Amelia through it all. How to draw milk from the cow dubbed Rosie, who sported a feisty streak. How to mount his mildest mare, a bay named Lily. He never pressed, never barked, never raised a palm. On crisp dusks, he'd align vacant jars along the rail and place his extra sidearm in her grip. The opening volley shook her so fiercely she gasped for air. Yet within days, she could shatter a vessel square from a stake at 20 paces. At the outset, Amelia recoiled whenever Will shifted abruptly. But bit by bit, hour by hour, the recoils faded. One midday, as they patched a barrier amid the fierce Wyoming blaze, Amelia truly chuckled. It marked the premier hearty guffaw Will had drawn from her. "What's tickling you?" Will queried, dabbing perspiration from his brow. "You," Amelia replied, beaming. "You just swore at that rail for a solid 5 minutes, like it had slandered your kin." Will let out a low rumble. "That's a mulish rail. Takes after its kin." They toiled shoulder to shoulder till twilight. And that eve, for the premier occasion, Amelia didn't bid Will claim the floor. You can join me on the bed," she ventured, hesitant. "I believe in you." Will inclined his head deliberately. "Only if you're certain." "I am." They stretched out on contrary flanks that night, a solid 2 feet apart. But near the witching hour, Amelia's palm inched over the linens. Her digits met Will's scarred, rugged one, and she clasped it. Will stayed still, merely clasping in return, soft as cradling a fledgling. A fortnight on, beneath a balmy August moon, Amelia turned and pressed her lips to Will's inaugural time. Not from duty, from desire. What unfolded was deliberate, mindful, and worlds removed from her inaugural eve of horror. Will paused often to check her comfort with his spirit. She affirmed yes each turn, and upon its close, Amelia wept once more. But this round Will grasped. These were altered droplets. "Gratitude," she sighed against his torso. "Thanks for your patience." Will brushed his lips to her crown. "Thanks for granting a weathered fellow another shot at true warmth." Yet 400 miles eastward in Indiana, Harlan Thorpe scanned a dispatch from the Willow Creek station master, and rage boiled within. 3 months' peace, that's their span. It was a Tuesday morn in late October when Amelia strung linens on the line outdoors. The Wyoming gusts were rising, bearing the tang of brewing storm. Will was afield, inspecting the herd in the northern meadow. That's when the rig's rumble reached her. Amelia lifted her eyes and felt her form solidified a granite, for descending that rig, sporting the identical cruel grimace etched in countless bad dreams, was Harlan Thorpe. Atop the seat beside him perched Willow Creek's county marshal, a weary fellow called Elias, whom Harlan had swayed with a flask of spirits and a yarn about a pilfered mount. "There she stands," Harlan proclaimed, jabbing toward Amelia like a wayward pup. "My stepdaughter, the pilferer who vanished into the gloom." Amelia let the sodden cloth slip from her grasp. Her palm commenced to shiver. All those weeks of mending, of reclaiming sanctuary, evaporated in a heartbeat. "Marshal Elias?" doffed his brim. "Ma'am, this gent penned my bureau claiming you fled with his steed and abandoned tallies. I'm bound to weigh both tales." "Tallies?" Amelia's tiber fractured. "He dubs that nurture?" "I sustained you, garbed you, sheltered you, post your ma's passing," Harlan intoned sleekly, "and you recompense by swiping my mount and bolting to wed some outsider? You owe me $500, lass, or you're returning to Indiana where you fit." Ere Amelia could retort, she caught the thunder of hooves. Will galloped in swift, grit billowing in his wake. He spared one glance at Harlan, and his mandible locked so fierce you might hear enamel scrape. "Vacate my claim," Will uttered low. But that hush from Will rang deadlier than a roar. "This don't involve you, cowpoke," Harlan jeered. "This lies twixt me and my kin." "Stepkin," Will amended, dismounting. "And she ain't yours no more. She's my bride, bound and lawful. We registered in Willow Creek 3 moons past. So whatever grudge you fancy here, it ends afore you heed what's coming. Do me a solid. Tap that subscribe icon this instant, 'cause this tale's about to twist mighty. Grab a mug of joe, get comfy, and chime in the remarks what hour it strikes where you're tuning in from. I cherish hearing from y'all. Now, where'd I leave off? The clash. Harlan smirked, that slick smirk of his. "She yet owes me $500 for her rearing. A fella's due for such tending, sir. Marshall'll vouch." Marshal Elias shifted uneasy. "All I can is he alleges you owe coin and a pony out this way. That spells grave doings." "Reveal it," Will urged abrupt, eyeing Amelia. "Will no," Amelia hissed. "Reveal it," Will echoed, his lilt kind yet resolute. These gents must grasp the precise sort of tending you knew. Amelia's grasp shook as she eased open her cuff. She folded back the cloth, bearing the terrain of ancient welts and wan contusions that yet scarred her flesh like a ledger of perdition. Marshal Elias blanched. 5 years, Amelia declared, her voice firmer now. 5 years of this. That's the tending he means. But Harlan hadn't yielded. Not hardly. Marshal Elias fixed on those welts long. Then he eyed Harlan with revulsion. "Mr. Thorpe, I reckon you best clamber into that rig and hightail for Indiana, for I telegraph your local bench and pose some thorny queries. Thrashing a lasso is outlawed where I hail from." Harlan's visage flushed, crimson. "She's fibbing. Them welts might stem from aught, field mishaps." 5 years' tally of mishaps. Will advanced. "On a gal barred indoors most days. Have another go." The marshal assented. "You got 1 hour to dust this county, Mr. Thorpe. Thereafter I'm drafting a docket, and mark me, whispers fly swift twixt Wyoming and Indiana badges." Harlan hoisted back to his rig, but the glare he cast Amelia was venomous. "This ain't finished, lass, you heed? This ain't done." They tracked his retreat, haze lingering in the rig's path. Amelia crumpled into Will's embrace, quaking. Marshal Elias brimmed his hat and departed shortly, vowing vigilance. "It's settled," Will breathed into Amelia's tresses. "He's vanished." Still, as he latched the shack's bar that gloaming, a grim twist lingered in Will's core. Folk like Harlan scarce gulped down shame. But Will erred. That midnight, nigh 2 a.m., Amelia roused to shattering pain. She bolted upright, pulse thundering. Will was already lunging for his scattergun in the nook. "Remain put," Will breathed. But Amelia knew that clamor. She knew that ponderous tread on the veranda. She'd endured it endless times in Indiana, oft right ere the lashings commenced. Harlan had returned. "I ken you're within," Harlan bellowed from without. "You reckon you can shame me afore a badge and skate free? You reckon you can just depart?" Will edged toward the portal, but Amelia seized his limb. "Nay, this is my reckoning." "Amelia, nay! He's ruled me via fright my days long. Well, if I don't confront him now, I'll glance rearward eternal." Ere Will could protest, Amelia snatched his spare 6-shooter from the bureau. Her grasp held steady. She strode to the entry and flung it wide. Harlan loomed on the stoop, liquored and livid, iron in fist. But spying Amelia with her barrel level at his breast, he stiffened. "You." Harlan chortled, yet it rang jittery. "You lack the grit, lass, always did." "True," Amelia replied serene. "The former Amelia lacked it, but I ain't her now. Now clear my spouse's ground, or I'll drill you a vent no mortician could mend." Aft her, Will framed the threshold with his fowling piece, bolstering. "She means it, Harlan, and should she err, I shan't." For the premier, she spied fresh in Harlan Torp's stare. Alarm. He eased his iron gradual. "You'll rue this, the pair of ye." "The sole rue I bear," Amelia stated, "is tarrying to defy you swifter. Now scram, and should you darken Wyoming anew, they'll size you for a coffin crate." Harlan reared back, mounted his nag, and vanished into the void. Amelia lingered on that stoop post his flight, still gripping the iron. Then her legs yielded. Will steadied her ere she toppled. "It's concluded," Will affirmed. "This go, it's truly sealed." But was it? 1 year hence, summer of 1869, the Wyoming blaze scorched fierce once more, yet all rang altered. The spread had swelled, and the plot Amelia sowed brimmed with vigor. And Amelia, she perched on that self-same timber seat sans the shack, no more the quailing maiden who'd landed a 12-month prior. Her midriff swelled with their debut babe, and when she beamed, it lit her gaze full. One sweltering noon Will trudged in from the acres and slumped onto the stoop. Amelia, 7 moons gone, sat a tread higher in her gauzy pale frock. The scorch lent them daring. She bent low, kissed him languid, and just then their faithful hound ambled nigh and halted, lugs twitching as if astounded by the sight. What transpired beneath that Wyoming blaze was tenderer than their bridal eve by far. Will savored that toasty, brimming glow he'd deemed lost forever post his prior bride's fade. "How you holdin'?" Will queried, sinking to one knee beside her. "Fit to burst," Amelia chortled, stroking her swell. "This little one's inherited your mule-headedness, I sense it keen." They hadn't schemed the span, but out here existence sprouted unbidden. Will laid his ear soft 'gainst her form hearkening. "That's my lad or lass within, don't fret which, long as they've your mettle." Amelia trailed her digits through Will's silvering locks. "I never thanked you true, you know, for rescuing me." Will lifted to her, wagging his head. "You flipped the tail, Amy. You rescued me. I was mere a solitary codger drifting through days 'fore you arrived. You restored spark to this spot. To me." She dipped and kissed him feather light. "We rescued one another. Then how's that strike? Rings spot on." As the orb ascended, daubing the Wyoming vault in hues of amber and azure, Will pondered all they'd weathered, the ache, the fright. Moons on, a curt missive from Marshal Elias hinted a whisper that Harlan Thorpe caught a blade in some Indiana tavern. Perchance fact, perchance fable. To Amelia's mind, he perished the eve she met him on that stoop, iron in hand. But chiefly, Will mulled fresh starts. Here's the lesson from Will and Amelia's yarn, and perchance you could use this now too. It's never too tardy to reboot, and off the boldest deed is letting a soul cherish you once the globe's tested to shatter you. Amelia might have let those 5 years of inferno shape her. She didn't. She opted to mend. She chose to confide anew. That pick altered all. If this yarn stirred your core, grant a wish. Smack that thumbs up, join the feed, and pass this to one needin' word that mending holds. And I crave your voice. Ever had to reboot from zilch, or muster the nerve to lean on trust post a shattering? Spill a note down yonder. We're kin to Amelia and Will, every one. We've all borne marks, but them marks don't forge us. What forges us is our next stride, the self we elect. Will and Amelia forge beauty from shards, and you might too. Grateful for joinin', kin. Till the morrow, guard your ticker wide and your grit fierce.